Let's talk about two. Let's talk about two mystical adventure films. Big Trouble in Little China versus The Golden Child. Both of these films, released in 1986, concerned Eastern mythology and humor, but only one of them was a hit. Big Trouble in Little China had a budget of about $20 to $25 million, and domestically at the box office it only raked in about $11 million, making it a box office bomb. But the Golden Child, on the other hand, had a similar budget, about $25 million, and starring Eddie Murphy in peak Eddie Murphy stardom. This is just a little bit after doing Beverly Hills Cop, but this movie was a box office smash hit, coming in with $149 million. Now, Big Trouble in Little China is now a cult classic, and most people probably like it better than The Golden Child. And Big Trouble in Little China does have a Scream Factory Blu-ray release. It has not received a 4K UHD release, but The Golden Child, on the other hand, has. And it is a new Vinegar Syndrome 4K UHD limited edition Vinegar Syndrome Ultra release. In this video, I'm going to crack this thing open and we're going to take a look at the contents inside. We're going to talk about that 4K transfer, and I'm also going to talk about my impressions of this film the first time I saw it and the updated impressions as well. And if you do me a favor, go ahead and like this video. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Now, Vinegar Syndrome Ultra, as you can see, is a very thick Vinegar Syndrome release, and this is one of their newer things that they put out. It's usually when they put these out, it is kind of like a more of a higher budgeted film. Another example of these is Showgirls, and also Congo. But they put these out, and fairly impressive releases, and they do a very good job on the 4K transfers. The first time I saw The Golden Child, I saw parts of it back in the day. I think my parents were watching it on HBO or something like that, and at the time, some of those scenes were kind of disturbing. Now, this is like a dark fantasy comedy with some action in it, but it also has some mild horror elements as well. There are some demons in it and things of that nature. I remember the Golden Child himself appears as a young Asian boy. It does seem to be some kind of otherworldly being, and he has special magical powers. He's able to bring this bird back to life, this really colorful bird that it shows throughout the film. But he's also has, as the film goes on, you see some other powers that he does have. But the Golden Child is an innocent, and he is a force of good. And that's why these bad guys show up at this Tibetan temple where the Golden Child's hanging out with this group of monks, and they are there to kidnap him. So suddenly everyone is kung fu fighting. This group of cutthroats is led by a character named Sardo Numspa, played by Charles Dance, and he is one evil bastard. Now, you may recognize Charles Dance as Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones. He also played a major character, a good character in Aliens 3, and another villain in The Last Action Hero. But here, he shows up, they're there to kidnap the Golden Child, and I think they pretty much kill all the monks and they kidnap him. They put him in a cage. And they really want to kill him, but they can't just kill him outright for some reason. They have to poison him with unpure blood for this to work. And they try to hide it in this pan of oatmeal and give it to him, but he's too smart. He's not going to fall for that shit. The reason that they want to kill him is because he is a force of good, like I said before, but he's also supposed to, according to the prophecy, bring about a balance of peace, and they can't have that. It's going to interfere with their evil schemes. And if they kill this Golden Child, all the balance is going to kind of go towards evil instead of good, and that's what they need. Pretty bad. A quick bit of trivia about the actor who plays the Golden Child here, billed as J.L. Reet. Real name Jasmine Reet. That's because it's a girl. It is a girl playing a boy, but she's very convincing. I was convinced until I saw a picture of her recently at a reunion between her and Eddie Murphy. And in the reunion picture, of course, here's what she looks like. Yes, but she was probably cast because of her very calm presence. I was very convinced when I saw this. I've seen the film probably several times, and I never really picked that up. But she does a very nice job playing the Golden Child. Eddie Murphy's character here named Chandler Jarrell. He is a private detective who looks specifically for missing children. The first time you see him, he's on this news station, and he's like talking about. He's no nonsense. The guy's trying to get him to talk about something else, but he just really wants to really get out there the kid he's trying to find. Now, the way that this movie was originally intended, from what I've read, was Mel Gibson was supposed to play this part, and it was supposed to be a fairly serious, straight part. And that's the way they shot it initially, for the most part, with Eddie Murphy. But when they presented it to the test audience, test audience didn't quite like the way Eddie Murphy was doing the part. They wanted him to be more like he was in Beverly Hills Cop. So they went back and they shot a bunch of insert shots of Eddie Murphy throughout the film. Now, there are a few scenes that I feel weren't reshot at all, and there's no comedy in them. And the first one is that one when he's on TV. Now, when you watch that scene, I think you'll see why the test audiences said what they did, because he's not the Eddie Murphy, the very charismatic Eddie Murphy that we all want to see. Maybe some of his jokes aren't that funny in this one. They don't necessarily land that well, but his charisma is there, and he is Eddie Murphy, and this may feel like a Beverly Hills Cop meets like this fantasy world, but that is kind of what it ended up being. But those two things actually mixed together fairly good for this. Another scene where I feel like wasn't reshot, when Eddie Murphy goes to this crime scene and he's talking to a police detective, and then he walks through the crime scene. He is very much by the book and very much like not making any jokes whatsoever. Of course, you're on a crime scene, but you would think that if it was consistent with the way the characters played throughout the film, he probably would have been making some jokes there. So if you look at those two scenes specifically, I think you'll see the Eddie Murphy performance the way it was originally shot. Of course, Eddie Murphy's character is tasked with having to find the golden child. He is approached by a woman named Nee Nang, I think is how to pronounce it, played by Charlotte Lewis. But she approaches him and she stays with him, and she actually knows a pretty good bit of mixed martial arts. He comes across a lot of people who know martial arts very well, and he is not necessarily equipped to deal with these, but she is, and she's kind of his protector. And this is very similar to Big Trouble in Little China, where Kurt Russell's character knows how to fight a little bit, but he doesn't know mixed martial arts, so the co-star ends up having to do most of the fighting. And the same sort of thing happens here in a similarly comical way. And you do see him fight some biker gang guys at one point, but he's not able to take on these other guys with a different skill set. But he is, according to the people in the film, the chosen one. They say he is the chosen one. He's the one that's been chosen to save the golden child. And so there's a lot of talk about that, and he doesn't want to accept his destiny for that application. He doesn't want to be the chosen one. So there's a little, and they kind of make fun of it, and that's a little bit about the way that Eddie Murphy plays this. It may grate on some people's nerves because he doesn't take it serious when they're telling him he's a chosen one, and he actually starts making jokes about it, and it in some ways makes the movie less serious. I think ultimately the movie is a lot of fun, though. It is an adventure film, and it does eventually get into, once he accepts his destiny and goes along with it, it becomes more entertaining. Not that it's not entertaining before, but it might kind of, some of the stuff about him making fun of him and all that, it doesn't land that funny, but it still makes sense that you're having to deal with, like, somebody lands this on you. Is this a scam? Are they saying I'm the chosen one because they're trying to scam you? Or you guys have to process that, and something has to happen to convince you that is the truth. And so it makes sense for a character development point for that be the way that it is in the film. There are some fairly interesting special effects here. There's a scene where the golden child makes his Pepsi can start moving around and dancing, and so that's some pretty cool stop motion animation going on with that. There's also some green screen stuff and things of that nature. Some of them aren't necessarily convincing. Some of it is a little early green screen. There's a scene where Charles Dance's villain sitting there kind of meditating, and then behind him everything kind of suddenly turns into like a hellscape, and it looks okay, but it's not quite convincing. But for this the technology they had at the time, it works pretty good. But let's go ahead and take a look at this physical packaging. So on the front we have the Eddie Murphy's The Golden Child. On the back we have the same title with Charles Dance's villain, and he actually is very menacing in this film. Once we open this up, now there is a disc in here, and this is a replacement disc. It came with it. It says, "Oops, we effed up. The original version of this disc contained an error. Please shred it or throw it the other one away." But anyway, so that's nice. They already figured out there was something wrong with it, and instead of you having to wait for this to show up in the mail, it was in here already. Now here's the Golden Child himself or herself on the cover of the booklet. I do believe this is new artwork, some of this, and it looks very clean to me. I really like it. So we're going to take a look at this booklet more here in just a moment. On the inside, here's the disc. It has a slip cover on it. There's the bird, the Golden Child resurrects on one side, and then the dagger. This is the dagger that can be used to kill the Golden Child within the film. And there's a big to do about it in the film, as you can imagine. But here is the same cover as that's on the outside. This is kind of the traditional cover. It's maybe more of an artist rendering of it. But let's see if there's a reverse on here. Yeah. So, okay, the reverse of it here is the actual Golden Child, which doesn't quite look right, but it's still kind of cool. But this one's the look of like the original cover art for the film. On the inside, we have two discs. We have the disc that is wrong, that we're supposed to shred or throw away. That is the 4K. The other replacement is the 4K. And then there's also a Blu-ray of the film. Now, it is nice that it has a Blu-ray of the movie. The Blu-ray comes from the same transfer as the 4K. And here's what it says about that transfer. It says 4K UHD disc contains the 93-minute feature presentation of the Golden Child presented in Dolby Vision, HDR, and newly restored in its 35mm original camera negative. And the following sound options: original 5.1 surround soundtrack, 2.0 stereo soundtrack, and a brand new commentary track with author, screenwriter Kelly Goodner and film historian Jim Hemphill. Also included is a Blu-ray disc that has everything on it, plus some additional extras. There's a pretty good bit of extras involved here with this disc. Now, these booklets are always nice to have, and I really do like the cover art to this booklet. Now, there's several essays throughout here. There's a picture of Eddie Murphy holding that dagger. And so there's several essays. I think there's like 3 or 4 essays inside of this book, and there's also some of them are accompanied with pictures. So there's a Golden Child on one side and Eddie Murphy's character on the other. So it's that's pretty much what the booklet's all about. A lot of times there's some more pictures. Now, a lot of times these booklets in the back talk about the 4K restoration, but that's not the case with Vinegar Syndrome. As far as the 4K transfer, I don't have a DVD copy of it or a previous Blu-ray, but I will say that the biggest difference between the Blu-ray here and the DVD, and the 4K is that the HDR grading. Well, in the HDR Dolby Vision grading, you do see more contrast, and the skin tones look a little more natural, but they look good in both of them. But especially in the 4K, here's a close up of Eddie Murphy's face from the Blu-ray, and then I'm going to turn it to 4K. Now, those are just pictures I took of the screen with my phone, but you kind of get the idea there. The film grain is visible here, but it is nicely preserved. I don't think there's a lot of scrubbing here. I do see more, when I look at that Blu-ray, I do see more film grain in some of the scenes. Some of them, especially the ones that are lit brighter in some areas, but it's not very distracting. I wasn't distracted by it. It seemed very natural, very filmic to me. Black levels here to me look true in this film. There's not a lot of dark scenes, but even in the lighter scenes, when you look in the darker areas, it looks, you can see the detail there. It's not crushed, and there's not a lot of grain there, like floating around and distracting or whatnot. The density levels and the contrast throughout look very nice. And actually, the opening sequence of this takes place in Tibet with a Golden Child, and then they come and kidnap him. And that part looks really great, like especially like the color grading. And the color grading throughout the film, for the most part, is a fairly natural color grading. But that one has a So sometimes when you're in those scenes, it kind of a little bit of an amber tone to it, but it has natural skin tone. So it's I really like that opening sequence, but I do like a lot of parts of this film. But as far as the 4K transfer, I think Vinegar Syndrome really delivered on that transfer here in this film. Now let's go ahead and rate this on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. Gonna rate The Golden Child. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. Now this is, I do like the film, and it does have a little bit of a nostalgia factor for me, but it is a very odd movie, and it has a very weird mixture of Eddie Murphy's humor and this kind of mystical adventure that's happening throughout the film. Vinegar Syndrome and their release here, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars, leaning maybe a little bit towards 5. I really like these Vinegar Syndrome Ultra releases. Now, for collectors of Vinegar Syndrome Ultra releases, this is the 12th one. You're going to want to snag this thing before the limited edition packaging goes away. And the only way to get this limited edition packaging is to go directly to the Vinegar Syndrome site. If you order this from Amazon, you're going to end up with just this. This is what it's going to look like when it shows up. So you have to get this badass packaging. That's probably about the only way you can get it, unless you can buy it from somebody off of eBay. But it's probably going to be cheaper to buy it directly from the Vinegar Syndrome site. For fans of The Golden Child as well, you want to pick this up, especially for the 4K transfer. Even if you get this edition off of Amazon or whatnot, you're going to want to check that 4K transfer out. I think they did a terrific job. So just to wrap this back around to the beginning and answer the big question of the video, Golden Child or Big Trouble in Little China? Let me know which one's better and in the comment section below, and let me know why you think it is Big Trouble in Little China. And if you would do me a favor, if you haven't done so already, if you would subscribe to my channel. I'm going to put a video here. Now, if you click on that box, it's going to lead you to another one of my incredibly awesome videos. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Thanks for watching.